made the coffee yet? What is going on, guys? Welcome to another Coffee Table Talks. I'll tell you what, I say it every time, but I'm going to continue saying it over and over again. I've got a wonderful guest sitting across from me today, Yashica. I can't wait to introduce her. But listen, one of the things that I do before I start a podcast is I say, guys, do all the stuff the influencers say to do. Like, comment, let us know what you think about the podcast and how things are going, the conversation perhaps. And also, I have started a GoFundMe campaign because I want to increase the quality of this podcast. I do. Right now, we have the basics, and I think the basics are good, Yashica, but I want to increase it to entertain you guys, and you are a major part of that. So if you want to chip in like $3, $4, that would be great. I'll provide a link where you can do that. But in the meantime, I have a really important conversation to have. Yashica, you are my first Democrat on this podcast.
I am the sacrificial lamb.
Well, Yashica, I can't wait to talk to you here. There's so much to discuss with you, especially for the fact that it's like, okay, even though you're, say, Democrat and I'm more of on a conservative side, you are running for a local office. And the tendency with a local office is oftentimes we can look away from these partisan lines that we often get associated with because when it comes to the local issue, everybody wants to travel down a safe road. Everybody wants to live in a safe neighborhood and things of that nature. So, Yashica, I want you to start off by giving us a little bit about yourself and the race that you have put yourself in to run for commissioner.
Okay, so about Yashica, I am a Georgia girl, born and raised in Dublin, Georgia. So very well seasoned, very southern. I have lived in Cobb County for the last 11 years. Half of that time was in Smyrna. And then I moved over to Mableton where we bought a lovely home on 1.5 acres. It was what we wanted for the time. And I hope everyone at some point in time are able to achieve that same dream. However, changes have happened in Cobb County where 1.5 acres is a lot because there's so much development where they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller lots. But we can talk about that later. So as a whole, personally, I am an attorney. I work for the Department of Juvenile Justice. I have a husband who's also an attorney. We have very lively conversations. I'm more than sure you can imagine, two attorneys in one household, and he works in local government law. So having conversations with him has been one of the reasons that sparked my interest in government. Just seeing some of the people that come in the governing bodies and what their thought processes are, and then kind of looking at what my community looks like and where there needs to be changes that I perceive that needs to happen, where I don't see where there's a lot of advocacy there, and it doesn't align a lot with what the community wants, is really what spearheaded me into trying to put my foot in the race, even though I'm running against another Democrat. I don't think that because you have a certain political affiliation doesn't necessarily mean that you have the same mindset and approach to how things should work. So even though you say you're more on the conservative side, I think I'm conservative as well. I think that when we're talking about fiscal responsibility, I'm extremely conservative. I think when we're talking about ensuring that parents have the right to ensure how their kids are educated, I think I'm extremely conservative. But there are, things that I feel more familiar with as it relates to some Democratic policies. So I'm not really a person that focuses on political titles, more so as policy that's putting in place, and does it make sense for my family, and does it make sense for the people around me?
You see, and it's exactly like I said. It's exactly like I said in the sense of when you get more local, these ties tend to go away, and we tend to get down to the brass tacks that we really, really, really agree on. Now, the thing that I want to explore about you in particular is you bring up the fact it's like, okay, you worked in juvenile court. You say the word, advocacy. You say things that kind of remind me of, and I bring this up a lot in my podcast, but I think it's an important thing to bring up. It's like you're bringing up aspects of service, but in the sense that you are putting yourself in a position towards juvenile court in particular, right? And I want to know what drove you to go into that particularly, because it's not so much as like, okay, I'm going to go into this aspect just because it makes a lot of money. Some folks do that. However, I've talked to you before, and you have a service-driven heart, and your service-driven heart typically goes into the decision making of going into something. I want to know what drove you into going into that juvenile court
Okay,
scenario.
so I work for a state agency, so we don't make a lot of money, just to be quite honest. But I came from corporate, and in corporate, we made a lot more money. But I've always been an individual that has been focused on service, to be quite honest with you. If you look at my like background, when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a physician. So I have a master's in biomedical science. My undergrad is in biology pre med. I've been a director of a couple of hospitals up in the Virginia area. And then I came back to Georgia to attend law school. And so when I left law school, I thought I was going to go back into like hospital administration because I've always been a person who really cares about people just as a whole. Um, the reason why I wanted to be a physician is because I wanted to ensure that every day I was doing something that was impactful to an individual. Once I became a hospital director, I found out that I could create policy that can impact people that I didn't even have to see, I didn't have to touch. I think that that relates to now in my wanting to run. Being in a government position, you have the ability to engage other people. You have the ability to create policy for people just across the board that can impact their lives, their quality of lives in a way that you couldn't even imagine in such a magnificent way. Where at one point in time, they were burdened by a certain tax or they're burdened by, something that's going on in their property, and then you create a policy that helps enhance their lives. And you don't have to engage that person directly, but you have put something in place that allows for their lives to be better. And so I think that it kind of relates back to why I want to be in the a position like a government position or office, elected office, is because I can help create policy that really impacts people across the board, even if I don't see you, even if I don't live near you, I don't live in your community. um, if I'm able to create something that you can go back and say, because this person cared enough to put this in place, my life is better, then I've done something good for someone that I don't even have to touch personally.
Well, Yashka, let me hit you with this one. Okay, so you talk about, okay, creating policy, creating policy. I think one of the big hot button issues right now with the Cobb County Commission, as a whole, is they've created this policy, or at least they're pushing for a certain policy to go through where it has the intention to expand, quote unquote, expand transit in Cobb County. And I'll tell you, a lot of conservative minded individuals aren't really about this policy. Now, you talk about the creation of policy, but a lot of us have a tendency to say, okay, no, 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 we would prefer, less policy. Don't tax us so much. There's, as a young fellow, my perspective, just so you understand, it's like, I want to buy a house in this area, man. I love Cobb County. I've enjoyed this county. Ever since I moved here after my last deployment, came to KSU, about to have a wife and get married. I'd love to have a house. But this tax has the potential to bring in an extra $500 that I have to allocate to this county, which right now, just out of college, trying to find a job, getting ready to get married, have a kid, $500 is a lot of money, man, for me, at least, for me. So I'm curious. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts if you were, say, elected into this position? And the incumbent was, taken down. You were put in place. How would you vote with that? How would you hear out your constituents in terms of this tax policy that they're wanting to implement?
So I do want to make it clear. I think policies in and of themselves are just a directive, right? It's not not intentionally meant to burden anyone, but just to give you a directive on how things should go. Um, as it relates to the M SPLOS, I am very much against it. I don't think that we need to continue to burden our individuals with new taxes. I think what really needs to happen is that there is real fiscal responsibility that allows for us to utilize funds that we've already brought in that could be allocated to things like transit in a way that makes sense for Cobb. We have a general fund tax. our general fund where our property taxes go into that. If our current commission wanted to ensure that we were adhering to the times and what transit needs were in Cobb County, they would ensure when they did budgeting on an annual basis that they put aside monies for transit issues. We also have SPLOS. SPLOS is legislatively, it states what type of capital projects can be utilized with SPLOS dollars. Guess what? Transit projects can be utilized with SPLOS dollars. So now you have your general fund tax, you have SPLOS money that our residents and citizens have voted on over and over again. They keep bringing the SPLOS back every 5 years. They vote it back in. So you could budget for capital projects focused on SPLOS. Why? I mean, SPLOS would use focused on SPLOS dollars. Why do we need a tertiary tax in order to ensure that transit is handled when we've already brought in monies for that? So I'm not against us making sure that we have the type of transit that makes sense for Cobb County. I am against us continuing to burden people's pockets by adding on another tax to do things that the taxes that we already pay into can handle. That's my problem.
Well, let me ask you this, because a lot of folks, we love complaining. People love complaining. We like to vent, we like to get stuff out. And I think that's where we have an issue in terms of this conversation about this tax, is because we like to tell people, it's like, here's why I don't like this. But as somebody who might be a potential leader of their community, okay, if you say, all right, I'm not really for this transit tax, right? How would you define the future of transit in Cobb County? And how would you pursue going about that business in particular?
Well, I think that we have to take things as they come, right? So we have a comprehensive land map that has to be updated every 5 years. We have to do that because people ingress and egress out of areas. We don't know what's going to happen in the next, 5 years. That means that we have to change the way we look at development. So why would we have a tax that is like 30 years long into the future, and we have no idea what we're going to look like in 30 years? I think that the same way we have to look at the comprehensive land map, we have to look at transit. How are the people that are living in the community now, how are they going about, mobilizing throughout the community? Do we need to add this particular thing in? Do we need more paratransit? Do we need microtransit? What do we need as the years come by? Maybe we may get to a point where we're not even driving on streets anymore. We don't know. I don't think anyone has a crystal ball to see 30 years into the future exactly what it is that's going to need to be in place. But when you put something like an MSPLOS in place, you have to already determine what those projects are going to look like at the time and how those monies are going to be utilized. And so if you look at how transit looks like in Cobb County right now, when we're talking about not cars, but like rail and buses and things like that, there is low ridership. They're not people getting on this type of transit. Do they have a plan to increase ridership? That didn't come along with the MSPLOS. That there's not a plan in place to ensure that once we put these like massive rails and all of those things, how are we going to get people on it? Because another thing is that we have a growing demographic of senior citizens, a lot of people that once they get to a certain point in their lives, they already have a method of how they want to move, how they think. So trying to change how people generally like move around, that's going to be a large task. What are you doing to put things into place now to ensure that ridership is up so that it makes sense to have the type of transit you guys are talking about implementing? It doesn't make sense for Cobb now. How do we know it's going to make sense for Cobb 30 years from now?
No, you and I definitely agree on this. We definitely agree on this. I like the fact that you're thinking forwardly. I like the fact that you're thinking particularly about your community in terms of like, okay, my community is going to age, my community is going to go through this. You are thinking about, what folks in politics call your constituents, right? And here's something that I want to ask you. Here's something that I want to ask you. is you've got a fellow Democrat, the current incumbent in the seat currently, right? Why do you feel like you need to pursue running for that seat when you already have somebody in there? What are your reasons in particular? I don't really like to use my podcast to bash, like, okay, my political other. But still, there is a reason why you want to pursue this seat. Can you explain that to me just a little bit?
Yes, and I'm the same way. I am not here to vilify anyone. I'm not here to, and to be quite honest with you, I don't have a real familiarity with my political opponent. Yes, we're both running on the Democratic ticket. However, like I said earlier, all Democrats aren't made the same, just like all Republicans aren't made the same. So, my thought process is that the person that sits there now, um, from just my perspective, a lot of times what happens is that when you go and you go to a board of commissioners meeting, it seems like you have individuals who tend to just want to vote together, even if that vote doesn't really reflect what the community is asking for. And I don't think that that's fair to the community, because what we are community advocates. They are our constituents. They put us in the place, they can take us out of the place. So we need to be listening to what it is that makes sense for them and what it is that they want. I think that between my particular opponent now and me, my focus is only on the community. I don't have an agenda. I have the desire to advocate. So I think that this is really advocacy versus agenda type race, where I am attempting to be the voice for my community and not the voice for whoever's sitting on the board at this point in time.
And I want to provide the viewers a perspective about advocacy versus agenda. Yashka, I do, because we talk. Let's talk about the word agenda in particular to the transit tax, and we kind of brushed over this a little bit. But this is a 30-year tax, a 30-year tax that doesn't allow for flexibility. What that does is that allows for a straight line. We have intention for Cobb County to go in a particular direction, and we're going to do that by implementing a 30-year tax that only brings in a certain kind of transit ability. You're not allowing for fluidity. You're not allowing for expansion or reduction or anything of that nature, right? You're setting a course. You're setting an agenda. And what you're saying, advocacy in the sense of your constituents, is you're saying that your constituents don't by and large agree with this straight line affair of Cobb County. That your constituents say, okay, no, we need to expand in some places, we need to retract in some places. We're going to have population move in here at times, or we're going to have population move out of here at times. We're going to have population grow here at times in age. And then sometimes they'll come in with the youth, and young families will start moving here. And having an agenda, if you will, to control a certain kind of again, we go back to the transit thing, right? It limits the county's ability to expand and retract, just as we've been saying. Kind of like, gosh, it's almost like I'm playing an accordion. You know what I mean? And what you're saying is you want to be the candidate, you want to be the commissioner that facilitates that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I want to be the candidate that whenever the community shifts or changes or whatever it is that they want, that's what's being expressed at all times. That there isn't like a hard and fast, and that's how it has to be, because things change, things are dynamic, and so it can't be a static way of putting things in place ever. You have to ensure that the people that you're speaking for, that is being heard and is resounded throughout on a constant basis. So you have to keep in constant communication with them. I think that that hasn't really happened over the course of the last administration. Um, I think that if you want to have a true view of how I feel about certain things as far as taxes, I think the MDJ did a really good job recently in their voter guide when they compared my opponent's like perspective and how she feels about certain taxes and compare my perspective about it, just as a whole. And I think I would like for people to kind of get a understanding of who she is and also who I am. And I also say this, and I say this with the utmost confidence, that if people were to go like on my website and find out more about me and determine whether or not I'm the voice for them, that they would see that I'm the person that most likely resounds with what they think and what they believe. But if I'm not, and I think people find this, quite endearing sometimes, because I'm like, if I'm not your voice, then vote for the other person. Because I think at the end of the day, what matters for me is that the voice that's being reflected is the voice of the community. And if I'm reflecting that voice, vote for me.
And you talk a lot about perspective gathering, and that's so important in today's time, and arguably why I do this podcast. Because it's like what I'm doing exactly right now is I'm sitting you down, as a Democrat, right? And I'm understanding that you have had a human experience in your lifetime that has led you to think a very certain way, and that way doesn't necessarily make you. However, it leads you to conduct yourself in a certain way, in the way that you operate in politics, in the way that you approach policy and things of that nature. Normally, I do this earlier in the podcast. However, just the way things went, I just wanted to go ahead and to dive into that particular policy, the transit tax. I think it was a great example, but this is really important. I want to know in particular, who do you think poured into you in such a way that made you think the way that you do now? Do you kind of understand what I'm asking? Like, who was that mentor role in your life that kind of put you on this trajectory of thought? Could you place that person?
I would think that I would give a lot to both my mom and my grandma, both amazing women. My grandma was one of the first Black women to own her own cafe in Dublin, Georgia. Which was a wonderful experience for me to see that, a woman owning her own business, doing something that she loved. And so it led me to know that that's something that I could also aspire to, go out, do something that I love, something that maybe someone else hasn't done before. Also, my aunt, who was known as what is called the Magnificent Seven in Dublin, Georgia, was one of the first Black individuals to integrate Dublin High School. So that is a major thing in my area as well. So I've come from a family of strong women who have led the charge in different ways. With my grandma, she died unfortunately 2 years ago. But one of the things that I will remember distinctly about her is that she was always like, I'm living my life vicariously through you guys and what you accomplish and the things that you do that I might not have had the opportunity to do, just given how I grew up and the times that I grew up in. And so anything that I do, anything that I accomplish, I still accomplish for her, because I know that she's looking down on me. I know that she would be very proud for me wanting to be an individual to make sure that I spoke for others who maybe can't speak for themselves, that I listen to people, and that I try to provide to people the best advice I can, the best direction that I can. I think that she taught me that in her entire life, because she was always about service. One of the things that I absolutely love to brag about, my grandma, even though she died when she was 92, she was still the treasurer of her church. She could like tell you every dime, every penny that was in her bank account to the T from like 2 months ago. She had such a keen mind. She was just a wonderful individual. And I hope that I reflect her in everything that I do. I really do. And so she never had the opportunity to see me run for office, but not while she was on this earth. Like, I'm sure she's looking down. It's like, that's my grandbaby. But like, I feel like if she knew that I was doing this, she would know that it was because it was in my heart to do it. It was in my, I prayed about it. Because God is very important to me. I'm not gonna say God told me like resoundingly to run, but he didn't tell me not to do it. So I'm like, I'm here. I'm doing it because of my faith, doing it because of my family. I'm doing it because of my community, because I want all of those things to align with each other, and I want everything to be across the board. I want my community to just do better. I just want them to have better than what I've seen happen in the last administration.
Well, Yashica, you have been a beautiful guest. Your rhetoric has been wonderful. The talk that we've had has been delightful. I've got to say, I am excited to see how you conduct yourself in this race. I'm excited to see how it turns out. And even if it turns out in a way that you don't particularly win, you seem like the kind of individual that enjoys learning from the experience. So just to kind of close things off, I want you to talk to your constituents. I want the people viewing this video to hear a message from you as we close things. So by all means, you can look at the camera, you can continue looking at me, whatever you want to do. Just let them know who you are, how they can reach out to you, and all of that fun stuff.
So you can reach out to me by going to my website, www.yashicamarshallforcobb.com. Again, www.yashicamarshallforcobb.com. You can also send me an email at yashica4 district4.com. At gmail.com. I always try to be very responsive to people when they send me emails. I feel like it's very important for people to feel like they can touch me, talk to me, engage with me. That's how I want to be the entire time if I do happen to win this race. I want individuals to know that I will never be someone that isn't there to speak with you. I think that it's important for people to feel like they have your ear, that you care about what's happening with them. And I want to give that to you. If I do happen to win, I want to ensure that you always know that I'm here, I'm listening, I'm trying to push forward what it is that the community wants. I am not about agendas. I'm all about advocacy. I'm all about showing appreciation to those who voted me in, because they can take me out at any point in time. So I don't think that there is a time where I should look at anybody as lesser than. I should always, focus on people being really the reason why I'm here. It's all about the people. It's nothing else that matters in this whole thing. And I think that one of the things that is probably the strongest about me is that I'm really good at connecting and making relationships and networking. And no matter what you have done in your past, whatever your employment history is, your education, it's about networking. It's about people. It's about being able to work with people and be able to get things done. And I think I have the ability to do that. Mm-hmm.
Well, Yashica, thank you so much for taking the time. Gotta enunciate. Taking the time to sit down and talk to me. Cheers. Great conversation.